Suzanne takes you down to her place near the river.
I think artists are always going to keep creating, and I think it's just going to morph and change. And I'm not sure what the end game is or how it's going to evolve or devolve from here. But I think the important thing is like just to keep creating. If nothing less, maybe creation is going to emanate as a way of staving off the madness and staying sane. And if not, and if that's part of it, then that's beautiful too.
That was Justin Connor, my guest on today's podcast.
And you want to travel with her, and you want to travel blind, and you know that she will trust you.
Welcome to the Sue Speaks podcast, searching for unity in everything. I'm your host, Suzanne Taylor. How can we turn the world around? Can we turn this world around? That's what I talk to my thought-shaping guests about. In fact, everything I've done has been in pursuit of the more beautiful world our hearts know is possible, buoyed up by that famous quote by Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. When it comes right down to it, all we have is each other. And when I find the best of what humanity has to offer, it's a thrilling experience. I don't know how anyone can be as talented as Justin Connor. It can take a lifetime to get good at just one of the several aspects of show business he is very good at, from acting to singing to writing lyrics and music, which he's done for his film, The Golden Age, The Life and Times of Maya O'Malley, that he also wrote, produced, and directed, and is swimming in 5-star reviews. It's a very unusual mockumentary that I kept wondering about, thinking it was a documentary. It was so believable as people speaking off the cuff, but it was all scripted. Just to give you a flavor of the kind of talent he has, here's one of Justin's accolades. Justin's music is a fearless celebration of various musical styles and sounds, infusing dreamy melodies, lush arrangements, 70s classic rock acoustics, and spacey mantras that seek to soothe the senses with a common collective thread of consciousness. The heart of the music is centered on Justin's soulful voice, which often embodies a soft, earnest whisper reminiscent of a young Harry Nelson, while putting his own stamp on defining a unique, contemplative musical pop genre with style to spare, and for the movie, a reminder of what great art can be: moving, emotional, but above all, great entertainment. Justin and I were put together by an old friend and previous podcast guest, Victoria Moran, who's a major figure in the vegan world. Where Justin got in touch, it was one of those things where sometimes you can tell right away that someone is on your wavelength. He's the sort of person I'd marry if he weren't more my children's age than mine. And for the second time with Justin, I'm doing a podcast trying to come up with what we think about what might be done at this time to help bring about the massive changes we need. With the entertainment business reliance on people in close quarters, I'm asking you, Justin, if you ran the world, what would you do?
What would I do? Oh gosh, I don't want to be the president. Um, if I were to run the world, I think I would instruct people to create more. It's funny when we're kids and we're in the sandbox and creating more. There's not like this competition of what is this going to become or what is he creating or she creating. And I think there's an element now of this culture, whether it's with social media or Hollywood or bestsellers or reviews or all of it, where there's this innate competition where we're not really meant to compete with each other. And I think if I were to change the world, I would want more people to just create for the sheer joy and revel of the act of creation, how freeing it is. And I think that was kind of where this project emanated from and was the impetus for it. Was how can we create something of substance that heals not just myself in creating it, my own story and sharing it, but is reflective of the same collective struggle we all have. We all have our own wounds. We all have our own dharma and fate of what we're supposed to go through. I think the archetype that I respond to the most, if I were to change the world, is sort of the wounded healer. And I think that's where we're all kind of walking in the same sea. I think we've all gone through these different wounds, and how can we heal ourselves as well as heal others by sharing, our plight, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense to me. As I go through life, at times you kind of reevaluate keep reevaluating. What am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? And my latest batch of what am I doing in terms of, well, what's the good life, or what makes me happy, or, how do I feel okay? Being creative is the number one. And then there's a number two, and people say, what? That's so egotistical. The number two is to be appreciated.
Yeah.
If you go and create and you do your wonderful and nobody cares, it's like,
I know. I find that's been coming up a lot for me too in relation to the film, because there's an element of like, we want everyone to appreciate us. And I think that like self-love and getting feedback for those creations or what it is, whatever we do in life, I think that's a natural phenomenon. But I also think it's good to just like revel in the fact that you're created something of substance, of worth that you believe in, and not get too caught up in that as well, because I think it's good to want that appreciation, that feedback. And I've been getting a ton of it through all the Amazon reviews with the film being on Amazon. But there's that little insidious monster inside of us that is that not enough, we want more. So I think there's an element of just trusting what we're getting while we're getting it is exactly what we need according to how it's being received, and just making room for more of that appreciation. I've been kind of swimming in those waters lately in terms of just allowing what's meant to happen next unfold accordingly in terms of that feedback.
well, it's tricky. Of course, you can't be out there manipulating to get appreciated.
Exactly.
Right. I mean, you really have to be delivering from your soul. And at the same time, you don't want to do it in a vacuum, because, I don't know how it could have been okay to be Vincent van Gogh. How could he have survived that
Well,
incredible talent that nobody cared about? Oh my God.
I know. Well, that's why he lost an ear, maybe. But there's an element of I think it's good to let go of that need for that affirmation and expectation so much too. I mean, there are many people in this culture and world that are so starving for that feedback. But yeah, Van Gogh just reveled in the work. I mean, I think there's something to be said for that, versus how is this work going to transpose or transmigrate throughout the masses.
Well, yeah, I mean, a brilliance like that just, had to shine, whatever the world thought of it. I do wonder what he thought, though. Well, obviously, he had a hard time. Then I also think about the Buddhist ideas of not needing appreciation. You don't do it for that. I mean, we have whole principles of you just deliver, you don't care what comes back. I always think that's not right.
Well, I think it's hard because we've been programmed in a culture that defines our success by how many people know about it and how it's received. And it's funny you're bringing this up, because I was talking with a friend last night who's of the same devotional context that I am. And he was saying, there was a quote he was telling me, and he was like, in the next lifetime, I want to come back unseen, unknown, and unheard. In the sense that all of these things can sometimes be distractions too of our devotional path, that we want to really stay connected to that devotional thread. And sometimes that need that we have for name and fame, or what we call in the East pratishta, which is this hankering to be known. I think that's some of the themes that I explored in the film, and why I kind of took on this character of a famous person who falls out of limelight and people aren't sure if it's real or fake, and playing with those ideas. Is this whole idea of identity and acknowledgement. It's beautiful. We all want to be acknowledged for what it is we share, our gifts and such, but it's also good to step back and not be as chained to it like a prisoner, and there's an element that can sometimes dissuade us too. So I think it's about just surrendering from that attachment, and I struggle with it, because, while you're promoting a film, you want, of course, the most amount of people seeing it and be moved by it, but you don't want to be harangued or, like I said, chained to that whole concept as well, because I think that could be equally as frustrating as if you never made it at all, if that makes sense.
Well, tricky to be a human being, I think.
Yeah, I know. It's
really got to navigate a lot of tricky waters.
I know,
Really.
I know. And I think culturally we're programmed to think what success is a sense of happiness or homeostasis or success. And I think we're kind of redefining what that is for all of us, whether as creators or just as souls moving through this earth. So I think, it's kind of a apropos topic these days.
Well, what do you think though now, in these weird days where the entertainment business is under incredible challenge? Where are we going with this? If you ran the world here,
Oh
what
man,
are we going to?
Jesus.
Yeah, it's very, very challenging, I think, because as you watch, obviously people operating in this new technology rather than the way we used to sit together in theaters. I mean, do you have ideas about that? Because so far what I've seen has not been thrilling. It's like, wait, we're not using the medium correctly or
Mm.
adjusting to this new medium. We're trying to put new wine in old bottles, whatever that is. Yeah, so I listen to somebody doing a lecture, and then I can ask questions as a Q&A. No, that's what we used to do when we sat and watched someone on a stage, but we're not on a stage. We're in a living room, kind of. So how do we do this? How do we do entertainment? Do you have ideas for how to deliver in the new world we're in?
Sure, sure. I think that, oh, wow, that's a big topic. Well, first of all, I think what's scary or frightening in terms of what you said, the entertainment industry, I think probably Hollywood's frightened in their boots a little bit because there might not be as many people going to theaters in this new day and age forthcoming. So, the music business has gone through this really profoundly in terms of MP3s. Now everyone's streaming music or streaming someone's album, or they're not really making the money anymore. Maybe they won't be touring as much anymore. So, and I think MP3s, MP4s with films, it's going to be kind of the same thing. I don't know how it's going to be able to, I don't know how independent films is going to be able to stay alive if we're all just, producers are getting paid pennies to have their films watched. So we're at a kind of a conundrum of sorts in terms of where we are moving forward. So that's been coming up a lot for me. But at the same time, in terms of where we move forward, I think there's been a propensity over the past number of years where films and superhero films, and it seems like there's this catapulting of trying to stay on these old sequels or these old TV shows and trying to reinvent them instead of coming up with new ideas. And I think whether it's this crazy age we're in moving forward or whether we're in the 70s, it still is the pound per pound same credo in terms of let's make compelling stories that are gearing towards the expansion of our cultural expansion and revolution, whereas it seems like Hollywood's been feeding us a lot of stories that haven't really expanded us in some context. So I think it's going to be the same credo moving forward in terms of producers and directors and actors and musicians moving forward to make really compelling stuff. Now it's like there's so many people making them or creating albums or films that finding their voice is going to be more challenging in this day and age. But I think it really comes back to the same pound for pound credo, which is what stories are we telling? Are they part of the solution to our greatest expansion and enlightenment? Or are they setting us back and it's the same old romantic comedies or superhero films or the same drama? There was a lot of interesting work that came out of that 60s, 70s movement in cinema with, Al Pacino and Scorsese and all that. And it was like coming out of this power struggle between the people versus the government. And I think we're at a similar precipice now where what we've otherwise allowed ourselves or chosen to be entertained by in the past isn't working to the same context. So I think it's just going to be moved by artists who are trying to do unique, compelling work that's unique to themselves individually and reflectively has a collective, story that can help move and shape the masses. So that's where I hope it goes from here moving forward. But I just don't know how it's going to stay viably economically moving forward in terms of being able to fund itself, given that everything's streaming and there's so much competition in terms of just garnering someone's time to listen to an album or to watch a film. So I think that's going to be probably one of the hardest parts moving forward from what I see in terms of Hollywood or media in general.
Well, there's a lot of different tracks there. There's the track of content. What are people writing, and what ideas are they working with? Same old Broadway shows and revivals and what have you. And there's a whole, I know, dialogue going on about wait. This should pop us into more meaningful. I'm not sure though. I'm not sure that it will do that. But hey, if it does, that's along with everything else where we need to shift our perspective, and we can't be selfish and greedy and running the world on self-interest anymore. So maybe that's that whole revolution of mutuality, caring about the world as much as we care about ourselves. That's the move we have to make. And then the product, I guess, would coincide with that. But then there's the delivery system, there's the pandemic, and what that has done to the whole economic system.
Yeah, exactly.
Aside from what let's say in the ideal world, we're moving on to more meaningful content. Somehow we've gotten ourselves deeper and more into being a more reflective people than a selfish people. Oh my goodness. I don't even know if there's anything that people can talk about. It's just we're in this absolute black hole, and who knows how we're going to get out of it in terms of the economy of the business.
I totally agree. I don't even know what's the viable option. Like, I don't know how it's going to. We may just see aspects or functions of, whether it's the entertainment industry or all kinds of industry, the travel industry. I mean, we're going to see so many people taking hits, or it's going to reconstitute itself in a way that I don't know it's just going to be a way of survival. I don't know how it's going to take shape from here on out, but seeing that so many, even the Hollywood blockbusters now, aren't showing their films in theaters and are just streaming them, like, how are they going to recoup the money they put into making this film, for instance? And I think, independent producers like myself are acknowledging and kind of reflecting that same conundrum. So I agree with you. I don't know what's going to rise from the ashes, so to speak, but I think artists, like, you mentioned Van Gogh earlier. It's like, I think artists are always going to keep creating, and I think it's just going to morph and change. And I'm not sure what the end game is, or how it's going to evolve or devolve from here. But I think the important thing is, like I talked about earlier with the sandbox, is like just to keep creating, if nothing less, maybe creation is going to emanate as a way of staving off the madness and staying sane. And if that's part of it, then that's beautiful too, but in terms of the economy of the business at large, I don't know. I wish I had the answer to that one.
Yeah, there are some things you kind of look at and your heart sinks. You just don't know how you're ever going to get out of that hole. So this whole economic model is, oh my goodness, I don't know, but maybe we won't solve that one.
Maybe it'll just create different forms of artistic expression. Like, maybe people won't make as much films, but they'll write some more books, or they'll make more paintings, or they'll build a house instead, or more furniture. So I just think it'll morph. It just might not be, the same context or the same budgetary resources that we've seen with film.
I actually when I was reading your reviews of your film, I was writing things down, little phrases down out of the reviews, because you absolutely are not playing in that ordinary, repetitive kind of way that we're criticizing. I just want to read a few of the quotes about your movie. Post-apocalyptic pop music, bizarre acid trip, and the person who wrote that ended up saying, downright mesmerizing, tragically beautiful, rather quirky in its originality, lush and lovely, songs for the end of the world, an end that you won't mind at all. I mean, your reviewers were so articulate, not to mention giving us the flavor of a movie that's not your standard ordinary movie. Multi-talented itself. It's like, oh, he did that part. Oh, he did that. Oh, he did it all.
Well,
Right.
I think for years I was just doing acting, and I really reveled that role of standing on a piece of tape and delivering the lines of someone else's script. And I certainly don't demean or condemn that. I always think of myself as an actor first and foremost, but then started playing music, and then started watching some documentaries about musicians' lives. And I thought, well, maybe I can make a film that could tell the story of an artist who's going through some of these things that we've discussed, but not be lip syncing. And so I started to write a song and then an album around a script, and thought maybe these songs could help tell the story in the film in the way like scenes do. I tried to make it that music is hard to ignore when it really hits you in the gut. So I really put everything I had into these songs, and people are really responding to the album. So it's sort of like the universal language by which we all communicate in terms of music. So I thought that might be a good way to make a musical that was on a different context of how we normally see musicals, where it's these big dance numbers and people are lip syncing. that I wanted to make it so real that we're not sure if this is real or fake. So for this day and age and what we've talked about, how hard it is to get people to see your content or whatever you're doing, for those who are listening, check out some of the reviews on Amazon, and you'll see, like, I think people are really moved by how music in the film, and I worked on these songs forever and shot this for over 10 years. I don't know how I did it. I don't know how I'm still standing to tell the tale, to be honest with you. And since Christmas this year, I've been sleeping a lot because it was the first time I allowed myself to take a break for a while. And there's a book coming out in conjunction with the film, like a memoir of the lead character in the film. So it's been a pretty inclusive process. But, you know, the main thing is, I think music has a way to really disarm us and really inspire us in a way that not many art forms do. So I really take that seriously. And like the guys like Bob Dylan and the Beatles and Harry Nilsson and George Harrison and John Lennon, all those guys, like they deserve as much of the credit of the golden age as much as I do, because I don't even really look at it as anything that I did on this project other than try to serve them because of how deeply they inspired me, if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, you're not underneath them. You're right parallel with them. You know, your own talent is comparable to theirs, and you know, in the same sort of genres.
Yeah,
and I
I'll
think
take that.
actually
take
very
that.
perfect for these intimate times, because
Yeah.
you don't have these big production numbers. You have this intimacy where you're right, kind of as you're watching the film, you're in there with him. It's so close and personal, and that seems to me to be appropriate for, you know, the times that we're in. Somebody with enough clout is going to discover that movie, and it's going to become, because of all of the production values. I don't want to give some sense that it's a, you know, little simplistic little film, even though it's an intimate one. The production values are fabulous. The cinematography, the originality of using split screens. I mean, this is quite a overarching, wonderful experience diving into your movie.
Thank you so much. That means a ton. Like, I put everything I had into it. I study films, I follow all the greats, and I tried to, like, you know, just honor how much they deeply moved me. And I've tried to figure out how, you know, it's funny what happens now in this day and age is, like, first of all, I think the release of this while we've been so locked up has been really advantageous to me, because people are like feeling kind of alone. And this one helps you feel less alone, because you walk through Maya's life realizing he's been through the ringer. So I think it's kind of allowed a lot of people to look at their own healing in some way. But in terms of the context of how the film was told, sort of like through a documentary, you and I know what's real and what's fake more than we've ever known before in the history of time. In terms of the news angles, we know that, well, that's real, following some senator or somebody on YouTube, or, you know, some little blurb of some video of some person on the street that we have a laugh at on watching the clip on Facebook or Instagram or something. So we know what's real and what's fake. So I tried to use that to my advantage as a storytelling device, because if I had shot this more narratively, it would have been harder to pull off in the same contextual way that Hollywood tells its stories.
Well, it was, you know, mesmerizing. Really, it's the best job I've ever seen. I mean, it fooled me, actually. Usually when you're watching a mockumentary, they're fun to watch because they're fun. You know, that whole style is so tongue-in-cheek.
Like Christopher Guest, I don't know if you've seen any of his films. You know, he's very good at those mockumentaries. It's usually tongue-in-cheek, you're right.
Yes, I love Christopher Guest and his whole cast of those wonderful characters he uses. But again, you always know you're watching Christopher Guest being, you know,
I know, totally.
But I'm watching your movie going, wait a minute, is this real? You know, I was an actress. I was a drama major in college. So I know a little bit about, you know, how to act. I was astonished at how good your actors were. They really looked like they were making it up on the spot. I asked you after, did you have that all scripted, or were they ad-libbing? It was scripted. Oh, I mean, really, it's a tour de force, really, well, just for that alone.
I appreciate that. You know, when it was all written. First of all, a lot of people have had the same reaction that you've had when watching it. One of the guys who saw it was like, he watched the film and then he emailed me and he goes, "Oh my God, this was crazy. Who is this Maya O'Malley guy?" And then he goes and starts Wikipedia and comes back and goes, "Oh, there." You know, so I don't want to give it away for people, but it's like,
yeah.
It pulls the wool over people's eyes. But in terms of the acting thing, like you said, over the years, you know, I'd worked with actors on films and doing theater with them and TV shows. And I was always like, if I make a film, I got to use these people because they're really good. But even as great as all the actors were in the film, I had to talk with them when we would do redirect to make it more natural. even though it's scripted, because the power and potency of a documentary or a mockumentary or a rockumentary or a narrative film, it all doesn't matter. All that matters is to get them to be so natural that you don't know. You just take it like this is a real documentary. That's hard. It's hard to get actors to do that because it's like, oh, what's your intention? And you want to have your moment. And it's like really like trusting that your beingness is the moment, how present you are with the words and with what's being shared.
Yeah, I don't know if this is relevant, but I did have an acting career. I did a commercial once for a dog food. The dog was off camera and I'm talking to the dog, but they want this to seem like it's not the dog. Like it's my husband or something. I'm going to feed him. And they kept saying to me, no acting. No,
Totally.
take it down.
Take it down, throw it away.
No acting.
Totally. And it's hard for people to do that, especially actors who are trained, because you like want to like sell something. And my whole thing with this film is like, I don't want anybody selling anything. I want you to get so raw and real with it that the relationship is so strong that we're just having a conversation like you and I are having right now. And that's hard when there's a cameraman, there's a sound guy, it's hard to get people to do that, but that was the key.
Well, it's incredibly hard to do. It is so tricky to pull off, and you pull it off beautifully, really, really, hats off to you. What do you think could happen? Like if there's a scenario, and now I know you didn't do it just to be famous, but let's say you get famous. Oh, you're being interviewed by everyone. Oh, you're the perfect new talent for our time. And what gets you there?
What gets me there? What do you mean what gets me there?
Well, what's a scenario that, okay, well, this happened and that happened and this, and now I've gotten famous, what do you think?
I don't know. I don't know I don't know what would get me there, but I think,
You're not unknown, by the way. But as I would read the reviews, I see, as I said, music is not my main suit. But
Right.
Reading the reviews, a lot of people really know who you are, but still you're not a household name. Yeah.
No, it's good. And I think the reason why I took on these themes in the film too is like on some level, I had to have my experience or storyline with fame or whatever it is to take kind of the piss out of fame. Pardon my English or Irish tongue is like, I had to like kind of play with it a little bit. Like, what is the upside of this and what is the downside with it? So I was kind of satirizing it. So there's an element of needing to know that when this happens, I can approach it differently, because I think there's an enamoring of those that are famous and their lives as if they're not going through the same struggles and troubles that you and I are. I think I had to have this journey of following what fame would be and what are some of the downsides to it through this film. Because quite frankly, living in LA, we see a lot of people that make it. And I've seen a lot of people that have everything that if I could wave a magic wand and have myself, they were still struggling with themselves in a way that I was probably struggling with myself by not having. I think the main thing is just trying to see our path and our creative or devotional path far beyond material claim, knowing that if that's meant to happen, then it'll happen. And I feel a little bit lighter in terms of stepping in those shoes, if that's meant to be, if that makes sense.
It's very healthy. Makes a lot of sense. Do you have any comment about what do you think we're here for? I think I picked this up from one of your songs. Yeah. Aren't we all just passersby looking for friends? I thought, oh, I like that. There's no answer to that question. It's such a kind of profound question. What are we here for? It's not like, oh, okay, right. That's right. It's just, what your kind of fanciful answer might be. And I like that, but aren't we all just passersby looking for friends? I always notice when people have something to say on that aspect that adds to what I've thought before. But what do you think we're here for?
Part of it's, I think my response to it would be like some of the teachings from the East. In the film, he goes through all his stuff, and then he goes through, digging up a very abusive past and singing about it and the therapy and where do I go from here? And then he turns onto the devotional path. I think we all have our own individual karma that we're meant to do X, Y, or Z, or things happen according to our progression, our evolution of our soul in these impermanent bodies. So what are we after? What are we meant to do here? I think it varies according to different jivas or different souls that are moving through this. And for me, I think I had a really deep karmic wound with my family, and I needed to explore that in this lifetime. And that helped serve. And that was really kind of, even though it was, harrowingly painful as a child, I think that served as one of my greatest gifts to then become a creative person in terms of exploring what I wanted to, express and expound to others about not getting trapped in the woe is me trauma of that, and saying, no, this can be seen as your greatest enlightenment, your greatest gift. So for me personally, I think we're just trying to absolve ourselves of these deep karmic wounds that we have to go through, and how we respond to them and then rise from the ashes of them defines the rest of our life and maybe the rest of our incarnations hereafter. So I'm really grateful that I went through these things early in life. Like in the film, it talks about near the end, just keep chanting, Maya, keep chanting. It's your only way out of this mess. So I think a lot of it, for me, it's like the devotional path. Like, I don't know if I would have unearthed this devotional side of myself had I not been going through these things, but maybe I had to go through these things in order to bring me to it. So I think it varies according to each person, like some people want to really tell something about the government or the state in their art, or some people want to just play with colors and form, and some people are interested in unearthing this devotional path. And I think mine was kind of the latter of the three. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. I think we've been polluted in some regard in terms of our conditioning and programming from the day we were born until now, in terms of what success is, what it means to be a soul moving through this earth. And I think, just keep creating, keep softening, keep trying to heal myself and heal others through music and media, if that makes sense.
Oh, well, it makes perfect sense in terms of what you're doing day to day. Let me just share with you a little something from my perspective and see if that's, another kind of perspective that you might have. So I'm a lot older than you. I've always been a doer and, full of creativity and I have many projects. But now I'm older. I'm still doing those things.
What are you talking about? You look young.
Well, I think it's probably because I'm still vital,
Yeah,
I think
you have a very youthful charisma and energy about you.
Oh, well, thank you. But, I think it is because I'm still involved. I haven't it's not over, but at the same time, it's different. And let me share this with you. When I look back, when I was in the middle of things like your age, it was all about that. How can I be a better person? My creativity, my life. But now there's something different has happened. I look back and I go, oh my goodness, I don't own the world. I'm not going to be here forever, which you always know, of course, but you don't. When you're in the middle of it all, you don't think about it ending. It could, but you don't think about it. You're not obsessed by it, that's for sure. But the older you get, the more it's in your consciousness that, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to leave. What was that all about?
Wow, yeah.
Really. But then you look and you say, well, what was that all about? And well, first of all, you go, oh God, look at all that suffering. A lot of it's self-inflicted. Some of it can't help. You're born in the wrong country. You're born poor, whatever.
Sure.
But a lot of it, all that drama that you cook up in your own being, all those relationships, all that agony, wait a minute. It's not like you're going to fix that and then you're here forever and you're okay. No, you're leaving. So why waste your time with all that going? I mean, therapy every day of your life to fix it, and then you die the next day? What's the point?
I know. What are we thinking? But some of that stuff, like you talked about, is some of the karma that we had to go through to have the realization of what you have now later in life. I mean, you are right. On some level, it's like, why are we going through all these incessant trials and tribulations in our life that we know aren't feeding us? We go mad, and then we don't realize the presence or the presence of life until we're a little bit older, like yourself, and you're realizing it ain't all about me. And now I really need to revel each day as it comes, because you always knew there was an expiration date, but when you're in the middle of your life, like you said, like I am, it doesn't feel as monumental or as around the corner. And I think there's an element of, I think I'll look forward to being a little bit older someday, but like, I don't think you can appreciate that sacred nature of day-to-day moment living until you get older. And that's kind of sad, but I think that's cool that you're reveling that and then looking back retrospectively and saying, what was all that drama even for? But maybe that drama was just your own karma that you needed to do to get you to such a present state of value in each day, more presently like you do now,
I'm thinking that everything you're saying is true.
I know. I mean, it sucks. It's like we know this is madness the way we live our lives. Yet at the same time, it seems like we have to go through those things as a function, as some kind of like karmic reflection of like, oh my God, this is what's bringing us to our understanding and our devotional path or whatever.
Yes and no. Absolutely. And really?
I know. Absolutely.
You really want to do it that way?
I know. Isn't there an easier way? And that's why in the film at the end, it's like, all you got to do, dude, just keep chanting, chant. I really think chanting and vibration, I feel like this next generation is going to start honing in on like, let's not go through this incessant drama like Sue and Justin did or others and these generations did that past. It's going to be about chanting, mantra, devotion, prayer, worship, breathwork, yoga. Like this is becoming into this golden age of our existence now. We're not privy to the madness like you're talking about, because we know that that's just an insane way to live life, yet we've done it. We've watched our parents do it. But I think this generation forthcoming is sort of like, I'm not sure if I want to do that.
Well, I think the generation forthcoming really, can be the cat's meow. That can be what saved us. But I can't wait for that, Justin. I got to keep, seeing what I can do before I
absolutely.
Before my departure date.
But none of us know. Like I could be gone next week. That could be my dharma and fate. It's a mad cycle. And that's why we don't want to keep wasting our years. Like it sounds like you're talking about we've all done with like therapy or being so self-obsessed with these crazy relationships or whatever, is that when do we start making more time for things that matter, have some lasting significance outside of just making us crazier?
Well, one of the things that I am bringing to the fore is this perspective that I didn't have decades ago, and maybe it can be a helpful kind of spur or out there in the ideations that we're all holding. I'll mention one more thing that I've been thinking about lately. There used to be a therapist in LA named David Viscott, and he died young, 20 years ago or so, but he was very famous. It was all during that whole human potential movement when we were looking for ourselves. And he had a radio show, among other things. He had a therapy practice and a radio show, a call-in radio show, which I guess probably that's what got him famous, because it was very, very, he had high ratings and everybody knew who he was, David Viscott. He had a technique for his doing psychotherapy. And the technique was you came to him once, told him all your situation. He gave you some homework to do, but you knew when you went to him and you had your evaluation and he sent you away with whatever this prescription was, how you were to behave, you were going to come back for another session. And that was it, I think, or might have been 2 sessions. That was it. You knew it. That was your psychotherapy. You weren't in 5 years of Freudian analysis. Right. You were in 1 or 2 visits, and he told you what to do. And if you did it, and I always found that fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, we are so like indulgent in our pain.
I know. We want to like revel in it and swim in it. And I was careful of not wanting to do that in the film, because I wanted to be honest about my pain and my wounds so that I could, because I felt like the only recourse outside of doing a lot of therapy for myself is I needed to announce all my wounds publicly on film as a way to like just discard them. Like, will this do the trick? Because obviously therapy doesn't, because we get so indulgent with it. And I think there's an element of, wanting to get messy with it. And I kind of struggled with, am I doing that too much with my own film? But the people who have seen it and had their own wounds with their family have said, oh my God, I had the same story, and then want to share me their story. So it's nice that it's becoming like this communal group therapy through the people who have seen it. But why do we want to get so, I don't know. It's like we have to create limits so we don't go too far into like swimming in those waters. Because really it's like they're in the past. I think it's good to look at them in terms of the insight so that we don't repeat ourselves in the same way those tropes with our parents or whoever the afflicted oppressors are don't then carry over into ours.
Well, obviously, the trauma is in some sense in your muscles, but nonetheless, That David Biscott thing, I think, is very revelatory.
I know. There's a certain element where you got to cut the cord, but you need to go through your bout with psychotherapy. But like you said, it's a fine line in terms of not swimming in those waters forever.
Well, we fell in love with it, I think. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, we discovered, oh, there's an inner life. Oh, hey.
Totally.
And then spent, the next 100 years
No
fishing
thanks.
around in it,
No.
These are not simplistic things. They're not black and white, but nonetheless, in the grand scheme of things, they're all pieces and elements and what have you. So what's next on your agenda here, other than getting this movie to be as popular as it should be? Have you grappled with any way to use this technology in a way that's not being used now? Because I think about that a lot. How can we deliver something called entertainment, which people don't seem to have a handle on yet?
It's funny. I think this pandemic has made people either crack up or really recalibrate in a healthy level, or maybe a little bit of mix of both. And I'm probably got a mix of both in that. In terms of what I'm working on now, I'm still like promoting it, and I'm finishing the book that accompanies the film. So promoting the film and trying to get more people to see it is really where a lot of my time lies. But what I've been doing a lot of, Sue, which has been really great, it was kind of my first love, is I've been doing a lot of painting and drawing, which was like my first love. So I've been doing that weekly, usually on Sundays. And, there's something about the autonomy of doing that versus all this technological wherewithal. Now, I understand why people are doing all this Instagram and Facebook and creating their own things and courses. And between you and me, like or whoever's listening, I don't really want to like stare at my phone any more than I do to exist in this culture. So there's actually an element I found through this pandemic that I'm moving in the opposite direction, where I'm working on more pound for pound autonomous art that's not technologically based, and it's feeding me in a way that I couldn't even begin to articulate. I'm kind of moving more in that direction, writing songs, working on the next album, kind of demoing some of that, and maybe kind of percolating on the next script. But, and those will come to fruition when it's time. But right now I'm kind of really getting off on like the joy of just like colors and painting and putting some music on and really digging that, I don't know, just creative act that I don't have to worry about cameras and crews or my phone or no technological screens. So outside of promoting the film, that's kind of what I'm doing just to stay sane. And I got to tell you, it's like I see a lot more of that in my future just for sanity, if that makes sense.
Well, I like listening to that, actually. That really actually has a very nice ring to it. I hadn't even thought about that. It's not perhaps so much how do we handle art and entertainment in this damped down situation we're in. Maybe that's not the primary question or the primary thing to pay attention to. And maybe it's, we'll limp through this best we can. But look at how interesting the energetic is for artists, for really serious artists who are out of the sort of ordinary rat race because you can't be in it anymore. It's not there anymore. And so then with people with a really artistic soul, who have that kind of creativity, what deeper place will they go to when they're not, in the surface place of pleasing the world so much?
Yeah.
Commercial game,
I so agree. I'm same page. I'm right with you. When you said, like, what do you see as the future of this? I think earlier we talked about in the show. I think it's going to recalibrate people in terms of you can still do a lot of creative work that feeds your soul. It just might not be making an independent film if like it's hard to recoup your money at it or find an audience. And there's so many people doing it now. I think it may just shift into other things. People might start building furnitures or building homes or clothing or paintings, or I don't know, things that are maybe more, I don't know, that feed the soul a little bit more than constantly trying to market through technological wherewithal. And I don't want to demean that, because that there's a rightful place for that, but I find I'm a lot happier when I'm not staring at a screen.
Yeah, I was picking that up from you. I was thinking I hadn't really thought about that it drives artists deeper, which could, have a very positive effect in the grand scheme of things in the long run, So I think that's quite encouraging, actually, because, one of the things is we're not encouraged, we're, challenged and depressed and oh my God. But, then if you get the right perspective, wait, it doesn't have to be that way. And I like that perspective, that it takes away your normal outlets and your normal busyness. And, now
that might be healthier. we're just going to be trading out using cameras or computers for maybe paints and watercolors and, woodworking materials. And on another level, that might create more of a community. And to be honest with you, I've been thinking about leaving LA a lot, as many people are, because I think there's an element of wanting to be more around Mother Nature too. So I think like this move towards trading out some of our creative toys for other ones that are less expensive to use and more autonomous might in turn create more community regardless of wherever we're at, where people might start communally creating together or sharing each other's work in a way that I find LA can be quite isolated in that regard, whether it's the life of an actor or a producer or a musician even, especially now that live gigs are done for a while, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of community in cities, in LA in particular, where everyone's kind of dog eat dog, doing their thing, trying to hustle and make something happen. That really, outside of that whole permutation, when we asked earlier about who we really are and how would you change the world, I mean, being in that sandbox and being in communities as people and as souls, that's really like what we want to do. We want to be around like-minded individuals and communities. And I feel like there's been an absence of that, and definitely with this pandemic, of course, but I think new forms of art might rise from the ashes of the film business or Hollywood pound for pound as we know it, going down or finding a different iteration of how it exists hereafter. So I think that's exciting, versus it being like trying to hold on to the way it once was. Maybe the way it once was making us crazy and careerists and, depressed. So maybe this is an opportunity to like open up a different can of creative worms.
Well, that's a perfect bookend for this podcast. Remember, I started it saying when it comes right down to it, all we have is each other. Yeah. And indeed, I mean, we don't know the positive results that are going to eventually come out of this. We're right in the middle of it, so we can't know the end. But I like all these ways to see it as a improvement that hopefully, please God, keep your fingers crossed, that we will come out of this more deeply reflective, less commercially oriented, and that it's driven us to deeper places than we ever knew we even had. A lot of my podcasts lately have been talking about the regenerative world, which is the one where actually the sophisticated economists are talking even sustainability is not as major as regenerative, and regenerative puts us back in nature where we've separated ourselves. We use the world rather than coming from the world. And these kinds of deeper thoughts that, you and I have been saying artists are perhaps being driven to. And in fact, praise the Lord for artists, because without that, all the cuts in budgets where they took away art programs in schools, what a horrible thing to do to a culture, to damp it down to where it's all about economics and not about soul or love or beauty,
I love it. I agree.
Yeah.
But they can cut whatever they want. They're not going to stop us from creating. It's just going to recalibrate the way in which we do. And that's what I think is kind of the mantra of what we've been talking about today. Take away whatever you want, put us in our homes and lock us up for another year if you have to. Well, I mean, we'll create differently. Game on.
I love it. And since you're in LA and you haven't left yet, and of course, if you leave, tell me where you're going, because it's my lifelong dream to be in the country with other people.
When it's game time to get out of these holes that we're encased in, I am driving across town and we're going to hang.
Beautiful way. But just to, go out of this in the same way we've done with all the other podcasts, how about my two questions? First of all, what's your mission?
My mission is to create and to chant and to keep combining the creative with the devotional, and hope that we can create a new world because of it.
Well, we can't go wrong doing that. Okay. And how about your one-line message to the world?
My one-line message to the world is to stay sane amidst these trying times and keep your devotional path intact.
All right. What a lovely philosophy, combining the spiritual and the artful. Couldn't be better. Audience, you can get a sense of Justin's philosophy in his own artwork. And I highly recommend everyone watch his movie, The Golden Age. It's available now on Amazon Prime, and there's a link for you on our podcast page. The film won awards on the festival circuit shortly before our quarantining. And as well as being a showcase for Justin's multifaceted talents, it's a really artful movie. You'll see from the intelligent comments in what high regard Justin is held by people who know his work. And I'd love to help make him a household name. All high fives you give him will be appreciated by me as well as by Justin. Well, I love talking to you, Justin.
Same. You're amazing.
Yeah, and I'm really such a fan and such an admirer of your awesome talents. Now I discover you can do art as well. Oh my God, that was new on this program. So, okay, I can't wait to give you an in-person hug until we meet again, Justin.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. So sweet. Thank you, Sue.
Now Suzanne takes your hand and she leads you to the river.
So, dear listeners, thank you for tuning in to my Sue Speaks podcast. Do subscribe so you don't miss any episodes, and visit SueSpeaksPodcast.com for notes on what we covered in this episode and for additional information about my guest. Also, I'd love to engage with you there to hear your opinions. How'd you feel about what you heard? Did you learn anything, or were you inspired to act in any new way? Or do you have something to add that would let us know what you know? This is a go-to place for people to grab cups of consciousness and fire away.
And you want to travel with her, and you want to travel blind, and you know you can trust her, for she's touched your perfect body with her mind.